"Excuse me," she said sharply. "I don't shake hands with staff." The words hit the air like a slap. Veronica Stone, billionaire heiress and CEO of the Stone Tech Venture Group, didn't even look up from her rose gold iPhone. Her designer heels clicked as she shifted her weight impatiently, clearly annoyed that someone had dared to interrupt her digital scroll through luxury handbags. Before her stood Imani Brooks, a poised black woman in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, her right hand still extended in greeting. The lobby of Valor Tech Global was sleek and futuristic. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished steel trim, and towering LED screens showcasing artificial intelligence breakthroughs. But in that moment, it became a stage for something disturbingly timeless. Veronica's voice, though wrapped in a honey-sweet tone, carried the sting of privilege. "You can let whoever's in charge know I'm here. And please let them know, no small talk today. I have meetings in Monaco and a jet waiting." Imani remained still, not offended, not embarrassed, just watching. Behind her, a young receptionist's mouth hung open. A few assistants in the corner went stiff, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they hadn't heard. One even reached for his phone, sensing a viral moment brewing. Still, Veronica hadn't looked up. She didn't care who she was talking to. After all, the woman standing in front of her didn't look like a power player. No diamond necklace, no entourage, no heirs. Just a woman of color standing alone, offering a handshake in good faith. Veronica continued, sighing. "Tell whoever it is I'll give them 20 minutes, max. I've already approved the outline. This is a formality." Then finally, Imani spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, and absolutely devastating. "I'll make sure they're aware of your time constraints," she said. "But just so you know," she stepped forward slightly. Her tone never wavered. "I'm not the help. I'm Imani Brooks, lead negotiator and partner at Newfield Capital. We're the firm reviewing your company's $5 billion merger proposal. And today, I'm the one you'll be pitching to." The room froze. Veronica's eyes finally lifted, slowly, cautiously, and met Imani's. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Then disbelief. Then something sour, almost like fear. It was the moment every mask cracked, every assumption unraveled. She had disrespected the one person in the building who actually had the authority to save her company. Because here's what Veronica didn't know. Her company, Stone Tech Media, had been bleeding capital for over a year. The last 3 projects had failed. Her flashy AI startup acquisitions? Busts. Her board had been growing nervous. They needed a lifeline. And that lifeline came in the form of Newfield Capital, a global private equity firm known for turning around tech firms, if the leadership aligned with their values. Veronica had no idea who Imani Brooks was. And in her world, that meant she wasn't important. But the irony? Everyone else in that room, every assistant, intern, and executive, knew exactly who Imani was. She had a reputation. Smart, fair, strategic, and absolutely unshakable. Imani let the silence stretch, giving everyone time to absorb the moment. Then she offered a small smile, stepped past Veronica, and said, "If you'll follow me, I'd like to begin the review. But if you're not comfortable shaking hands, I completely understand." She walked away without waiting for a response. Veronica stood there, eyes darting around. The damage was done. And the worst part? It had all happened in under 30 seconds. To understand why that moment in the lobby hit so hard, you need to know who Imani Brooks really is. Because to some people, she's just a name on paper, a negotiator, a suit, a signature at the bottom of a billion-dollar deal. But to those who know her story, she's a storm wrapped in grace. Imani was born on the south side of Chicago, where survival meant more than just getting by. It meant dreaming bigger than your zip code allowed. Her mother, Denise, was a public school teacher who never missed a day in 20 years, and her father, Terrence, worked nights fixing buses for the city transit system. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and they had discipline. From a young age, Imani showed signs of brilliance. While other kids were watching cartoons, she was flipping through her mom's battered college textbooks. She read business books before she was 10, wrote out mock budgets for fun, and once corrected a loan officer at her local bank at age 13 on compound interest. But brilliance alone wasn't enough. She had to fight for everything. She wasn't the legacy student. She wasn't the child of donors. She was the one they always underestimated, until she walked into a room and flipped the script. Imani went on to graduate valedictorian from her high school, earned a full-ride scholarship to Howard University, and later, an MBA from Stanford, where she was one of only a handful of black women in her class. She knew what it felt like to walk into rooms where no one looked like her. She also knew how to own them. By the age of 29, Imani had already worked her way up to senior analyst at one of the most competitive venture capital firms in New York. But when she was passed over for a promotion, despite outperforming her team, she didn't protest. She left, and 3 months later, Newfield Capital hired her as a junior partner. That's where everything changed. Unlike the old-school firms that wanted to put her in front of cameras for diversity optics, but not in boardrooms for decision-making, Newfield trusted her instincts. Within 4 years, she was leading some of the firm's most complex deals, tech turnarounds, energy transitions, even biotech mergers. But her specialty? High-pressure negotiations where ethics and capital collided. She had a reputation for cutting through arrogance like a scalpel. And when Newfield was approached to review a $5 billion merger proposal from StoneTech Media, her name was the first on the list. Imani didn't care about public image. She cared about leadership. She cared about impact. And she cared deeply about how companies treated people they thought were beneath them. She had made it her mission to dismantle the old rules of power and replace them with a system that rewarded integrity, not just pedigree. That's why she didn't flinch when Veronica Stone dismissed her in the lobby. Because she'd seen it before. Different face, same pattern. They always thought she was the assistant, the coordinator, the help. Until they learned she was the final yes or no. And the irony? Veronica's company had been desperate to close this deal. Their stock was slipping. Investors were pulling out. The board had pushed for outside capital to avoid a hostile takeover. Newfield was their last, best shot. And the woman they needed the most? They had just humiliated. Imani could have walked away right then and there. But she didn't. Because for her, this wasn't just about a deal, it was about a message. You don't get to disrespect people and then expect their trust. You don't get to punch down and still demand a handshake on your terms. She would still hear them out. But on her terms now. The glass doors of the Valor Tech boardroom hissed shut behind Veronica Stone, sealing her inside a room filled with tension she didn't yet understand. Her heels clacked defiantly across the marble floor as she made her way to the head of the long glass table. She dropped her designer tote beside the chair, smoothed out her silk blouse, and finally looked up. Every executive in the room looked nervous. Her CFO, Randall Pierce, wouldn't meet her eyes. Her head of legal looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. The junior analysts looked as though they'd seen a ghost. "What's with the faces?" she asked, forcing a smirk. "Don't tell me we're still pretending that woman outside is a problem." "Veronica," Randall began carefully. "That woman outside is Imani Brooks." "And?" she replied sharply, pouring herself still water from the pitcher. "And she's not just here for show. She's not a messenger. She's the lead negotiator for Newfield Capital. She has full decision-making authority." Veronica blinked. "She's not the assistant?" "No," Randall said. "She's the deal." Veronica laughed. At first, it was the kind of laugh you give when someone tells you a joke in poor taste. But no one else was laughing. "You're telling me the fate of our entire merger rests on a woman I just snubbed in the lobby?" she asked, her voice rising. Randall didn't answer. He didn't need to. Veronica leaned back, her mind racing. This wasn't supposed to be how things went. She was Veronica Stone, heiress to the Stone Tech empire, a frequent speaker at global finance summits, a woman who'd shaken hands with world leaders, owned vineyards in France, and made Forbes' most powerful women in tech list 5 years in a row. She wasn't supposed to need anyone, especially not someone like Imani Brooks. Veronica folded her arms. "We don't need her. Let's go above her head. Get the partners on the phone." Randall exhaled sharply. "You're not listening. Imani is the partner. She leads the investment committee. She has full voting power. If she walks, we lose the deal." Veronica's face hardened. "Then find someone else. There are other firms." "Not one's willing to take a risk on us," Randall replied. "Stone Tech's reputation has been shaky. The failed launches, the whistleblower lawsuits, the diversity backlash. It's made us toxic." He glanced at her, then added carefully, "Newfield was the only firm that didn't flinch." The truth landed like a hammer. Stone Tech Media had been hemorrhaging investor trust for over a year. Their AI ethics scandal had cost them a major government contract. Their last acquisition, an AI chatbot app, was a disaster that leaked user data. Morale was down. Leadership was fractured. Stockholders were restless. This wasn't a growth merger. It was a rescue mission. And the rescuer had just been insulted in the lobby by the very person who needed her help the most. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Veronica stood, brushing invisible lint off her sleeve. Fine. I'll make amends. Say the right things. Flash a smile. You know the game. But Randall didn't look relieved. He leaned in, voice low. Veronica, this isn't one of your charity gala apologies. You can't talk your way through this one. Imani Brooks doesn't just read numbers. She reads people. If she thinks you're arrogant, dismissive, or unfit to lead, she will pull the plug. Veronica clenched her jaw. So what do you suggest? He looked at her grimly. I suggest you stop thinking this is your boardroom. Because today it's hers. Just then, the boardroom door opened. Imani entered, calm, confident, her tablet in hand. No one stood. No one dared interrupt. She took her seat at the far end of the table and tapped the screen. Shall we begin? She said with a composed smile. Veronica remained frozen. She had miscalculated. Badly. The air in the boardroom shifted the moment Imani Brooks spoke. Let's begin. There was no need to raise her voice. She didn't demand attention, she commanded it. Her words were crisp. Her movements precise. She clicked to the first slide of her deck like she'd done it 1,000 times. Because she had. On screen, projections, KPIs, and industry trends, all laid out with military precision. But Imani wasn't just giving a numbers presentation. She was doing something far more powerful. She was redefining who held the power in that room. The tech sector is evolving, Imani said evenly. Consumer trust is declining, competition is up, and regulators are circling. Companies like Stone Tech must adapt, not only technologically, but culturally. She didn't look at Veronica, but everyone else in the room did. Your products are good, Imani continued. But your leadership scores are among the lowest we've ever reviewed in DI metrics, ethical governance, and employee satisfaction. Veronica shifted in her chair. Our technology speaks for itself. Imani raised an eyebrow. Unfortunately, your tech doesn't sign contracts. Your leadership does. Gasps from the junior team. This wasn't the polite back and forth most firms expected. Imani wasn't here to please. She wasn't there to smooth things over. She was here to evaluate, and she was doing so with the full force of Newfield capital behind her. Veronica leaned forward, trying to claw back control. Let's be clear, she said through a tight smile. We've built a $2 billion empire from scratch. We've disrupted markets, hired brilliant engineers, and filed over 200 patents. This isn't some social experiment. It's business. Imani didn't flinch. She calmly swiped to the next slide. Headlines about Stone Tech's internal lawsuits, HR walkouts, and diversity audits, all publicly available. She clicked again, investor withdrawals, declining market share, and ethical review scores from watchdogs. Exactly, Imani said. This is business. And today's business requires more than disruption. It requires accountability. A heavy pause. Veronica's eyes flicked around the room, desperate for support. But her board members were quiet, some even nodding subtly at Imani's words. Then Imani laid down the final blow, a single-page document, printed and signed, that she slid across the table without a word. It read, intent to withdraw. It meant everything was ready for Newfield Capital to walk. All it needed was Imani's signature, and the deal would vanish. You have 5 other options lined up? Veronica asked, her voice strained. Imani nodded. Yes. And 3 of them passed due diligence with higher internal equity scores than Stone Tech. We're here out of courtesy, not desperation. That's when the room shifted. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, hierarchically. Veronica was no longer the alpha, the titan, the billionaire with the sharpest tongue in Silicon Valley. She was a liability. And Imani? She wasn't just a negotiator. She was the gatekeeper, the one with options, the one who didn't need this deal to prove anything, but who could define it if she chose. Veronica tried again, softer now. What would it take for us to keep your support? She asked, swallowing her pride in front of a dozen staffers. Imani paused. Finally, she replied, authentic leadership, transparent change, and humility. Veronica looked stunned. You want me to apologize? I want you to understand, Imani said. Because if you don't change, it's not just this deal that'll collapse. It's your entire empire. Silence. For the first time, Veronica Stone didn't have a comeback. And for the first time, the most powerful person in that room wasn't her. It was the woman she didn't even think was worth shaking hands with. By the time the meeting ended, the energy in the room had flipped upside down. No one was rallying around Veronica Stone anymore. Her own board members, some of whom had sat silently through years of her arrogance, were now seeing things with different eyes. Imani Brooks hadn't shouted. She hadn't humiliated anyone. She had simply laid out the truth, calmly, factually, powerfully, and it had hit them all like a freight train. The billionaire woman who once commanded boardrooms with her charm and prestige now sat at the head of the table, quiet and still. For once, her presence didn't intimidate. It didn't inspire. It didn't even register. It was Imani everyone was watching as she packed up her sleek leather folio and stood. "Thank you for your time," she said to the room. "I'll be in touch with our next steps." She didn't look at Veronica. She didn't need to. Veronica's lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. And before she could figure out the words, Imani was already walking out, poised, polished, and unbothered. That should have been the end of it. But 30 minutes later, a knock came at Imani's temporary office on the 15th floor of Valortech's headquarters. She looked up as Veronica Stone stepped inside. Gone were the smirks, the casual power play tone, the designer confidence. This was a different Veronica, one stripped of armor, awkward and unsure. For once, she didn't lead the room. She was asking to enter it. "I wanted to speak to you alone," Veronica began, her voice oddly small. "To clear the air." Imani sat still, watching her like a chess master watches a late move. "Go ahead." Veronica hesitated. Her hands twisted together, something they never did. "I was wrong," she said. "About everything." She took a deep breath. "I thought I was walking into another pitch meeting. That you were part of the team, maybe the assistant. I didn't think," she trailed off. Imani raised an eyebrow. "You didn't think someone like me could be in charge?" Veronica didn't respond. She didn't need to. "I've spent years building Stone Tech," she said instead. "And I've made enemies along the way. But no mistake I've made has cost me what this one might." Imani stood slowly and stepped around the desk. She faced Veronica fully, eye to eye. No barriers. No paperwork. Just two women. One with her empire on the brink, and the other holding the pen that could either sign or sink it. "Let me be clear," Imani said softly. "This isn't about ego. It's about respect. About how you treat people when you think they can't do anything for you." That lobby moment, that wasn't just offensive. It revealed everything about how you lead. Veronica swallowed hard. "Can you give me a chance to change that?" Imani paused. Then she extended her hand. One clean, simple gesture. A handshake. Veronica stared at it for a second, her throat tightening. Then, almost reluctantly, like someone realizing the world had changed and she'd been left behind, she reached out and took it. That single moment was captured by a junior analyst walking past the door. One frame, one image. Imani Brooks and Veronica Stone shaking hands. The analyst posted it to LinkedIn with a simple caption. "Today I watched a woman reclaim the room she was denied. And then she gave it back with grace." The image went viral. Within 24 hours, it hit 20 million views. 2 weeks later, the deal closed, but under new terms. Veronica was removed from daily operations by a board vote. A new executive team was appointed, with an emphasis on ethical leadership, transparency, and inclusion. Newfield Capital's investment came through, and Stone Tech rebounded stronger than ever. As for Imani, she didn't just close the deal. She transformed it. She redefined what power looked like in a world that had always tried to overlook her. And the woman who refused to shake her hand? She would never make that mistake again.